All right, so this week we talked about a lot on our study, Life is an Adventure with God. We talked about His timing, Him being a compass, following His arrow, all of that. So I created this compilation of everything, and it's in our Facebook group. So if you're not a member, you can join that to get this as a free download. Otherwise, you can, of course, do your own version of all this, but I wanted to kind of go over everything that we've studied and recap that in our art piece today. So I started out with some antique linen distress oxide, and I put it all over the page because what I want to do is kind of like bring it into the center. So I'm going to darken the edges up with some vintage photo, and then I'm going to go over it with some festive berries to give it a little bit of a pink luster. And on the corners, I'm going to kind of bring them in to give that, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the corners kind of come in and the center is lighter than the edges. So it kind of brings it into a focal point. So that's what I'm doing here. So next I'm taking my festive berries and I'm just going over that brown, and I'm bringing it out a little bit further than what I did with the brown so that it's got kind of a tinted pinkish color to it. And I'm just going to put that all around the edges. And as you can see, I'm going in further on the corners than I am the edges, and I'm going in further than I did with the darker vintage photo as well. So I can kind of bring it in and make that that look that I'm going for. So then what I do is I'm going to take some water and spritz it all over the page. And remember, this is water reactive inks, and because of that, it will react immediately with water. I just dried it a little bit, and then I patted it with a towel and lifted off that ink so that it had kind of a tattered look to it. So it turned out exactly the way that I was hoping it would. And then I took some vintage photo and added some water and just spritzed it on the page in so that I had some splatters all over my page in those same colors to kind of bring it all together. I did get some on the verse, so I wiped it off with my paper towel because they're water reactive, so you can do that. And then I highlighted my scripture so I wouldn't get it lost in the art. So then I took some of the washi tape that we got in our box last month, and I tore it up and put it into some spaces on the page just to kind of add some black in with the browns and the pinks. And then I started to cut out my image. Now, what I did with this was I printed it on clear sticker paper, and then I sealed it with a spray sealer so that it would not react to water. And I put it on the page just to keep it there, so as I started stamping, I knew like where the image was going to be, because once that clear is on there, things come through. And so I didn't want I didn't want there to be images underneath the image that I'd already drawn. And I used these stamps. I got a package of these when I was on vacation at some vintage boutique, and I love them. They have just like all kinds of little different round stamps. So I used them, and I used the colors that were in my background, and I just used them to stamp with. And then I started doing some splatters, and I wanted to add some black splatters on there, and I used the soot in the inks, but it wasn't dark enough, so then I just pulled out some black acrylic paint and added some water and splattered the black on it. And then I took my stamps and I just painted that black ink onto the stamps themselves and added some black stamps as well, so that it kind of brought everything all together, so there was black and brown images all over the page. So I did that, got all that on the page, and then I was ready to go ahead and put my image down once everything was dry. So I dried that with my heat gun, and then went to put the image down. And the image has it has an arrow, and it has a compass, and it has a clock, and then it has an ink pen. And on day one, we studied about God being our travel agent and guiding us through. And then we studied about Him being our compass and how we have to follow His arrow no matter where it points, because He knows the places He wants to take us. And then we studied about how He his timing is perfect, and he knows all of the operating hours of where he wants to take us. And so we have to trust his timing. And then at the end of the week, we studied about him being the author of our story, and making sure that we allow him to take us in places even if we didn't plan to go there. So I decided to go ahead and put each of those pieces on the journaling part of the page. So I used these big stamps. I got those at the same boutique that I got the other stamps at. They're just big, giant stamps. I'll look up the name of them so that you can look them up and see what the brand is. But and I'll put it in the description below. But I put on here about him being our travel agent, our guide, our compass, and that he is going to write the story of my journey, because I did not want to forget that God is truly, in the end, the author. So in the image, we have the ink pen, we have the compass, we have the arrow, and we have the clock for his timing. And that was this week's page that I did. And then I got this cute little camper page marker from Beautiful Good News. And it was perfect for this page. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got that. So I put it on my page. I did have a little bit of trouble deciding which way I needed it to face, because when I was looking at the page, it was backwards. So then I turned it around. But then when I closed my Bible, it was backwards from the front of the Bible. So it didn't make sense to keep it facing backwards. So I then turned it back over and I turned it around again, because it needed to be forward the whole time. So anyway, I just kind of fiddled with it for a little bit, trying to figure out which way to face it. But it's so cute. If you haven't tried out Beautiful Good News, you should definitely go look at their Etsy page. She has some super cute page markers. And this one was perfect for a life of adventure with God. So I hope this inspired you to create your own page. And I hope that you will go back and look at our studies if you haven't, and join our Facebook group so you can get this cute download. And it is free, so just hit us up on Art and Jesus Facebook group. You guys have a great day.